the Executive Committee of the Austin Neighborhoods Council approved a statement outlining the concerns in response to Councilmember Poole's resolution. The HOME resolution stands for Home Options for Middle Income Empowerment. This resolution was approved by a vote of 9-2 by the Council on July the 20th of this year. The ANC's Executive Committee statement was sent to the City Council last week on August the 19th. This is a critical time for all Austin neighborhoods. Without the promised conversations, the Council is moving forward by deregulating our neighborhoods for developers and for their profits. Single-family neighborhoods are in jeopardy of losing big with this gross overreach of the City Council. With a special called joint meeting of the Council and the Planning Commission on Thursday at 2 o'clock at City Hall, this will be phase 1 of the Council's actions. During this phase, the Council will change the number of units allowed on residential lots to 3 units per lot. Please note, later on, in phase 2, which will be brought about in early 2024, the Council will move forward to allow much smaller lots of 2,500 square feet or less. In other words, a 7,500 square foot lot with 1 home on it today could be subdivided into 3 smaller lots, and each of those smaller lots could then have 3 units on each lot. As you recall, in phase 1, each lot would be allowed up to 3 units. What used to be 1 unit of a 7,500 square foot lot will now be 3 2,500 square foot lots with 3 units on each lot for a total of 9 units. More importantly, phase 2 is when the City Council proposes to adjust regulations or setbacks, height, impervious cover, and floor to area ratios. The adjustment could include an increase to building heights, a reduction to impervious cover limits, and reduced setbacks. An adjustment could also lead to fee in lieu as an option for the developers. Additionally, the Council will develop criteria for the use of recreational vehicles, also known as RVs, as dwellings on a single-family lot. The ANC Executive Committee and I are extremely concerned about many unintended consequences resulting from these actions, especially when no true community conversations have occurred. These unintended consequences include, but are not limited to, the following: increased creek and localized flooding from the increase of impervious cover allowed, combined with decreased street setbacks. The City of Austin is known as Flash Flood Alley, and the most vulnerable neighborhoods are in East Austin. The loss of trees with decreased street setbacks and increased density will reduce our tree canopy. The loss of solar access from taller buildings. Deregulating parking and removing city occupancy limits will add to the neighborhood's burden and create public safety concerns. Monetizing residential properties for profit, which will also result in current property owners' tax increases with all of these new entitlements. Property taxes are already a burden for many of us. An aging infrastructure incapable of handling the current demand, not to mention the foreseeable demand due to the proposed increased density. This will be a major concern for our neighborhoods. When we know there are multiple critical infrastructure issues that have not been addressed, such as compromised and inadequate drainage for runoff, leaking pipes, a permanently damaged tree canopy resulting from Winter Storm Uri, Winter Storm Mara, and the extreme heat and droughts. And finally, and more importantly, a sustainable ongoing access to water. No community can exist without water. The Council will be enacting a gross overreach with their actions. They are turning our communities over to developers. They have not consulted the community, nor have they had the needed conversations without their proposals that they promised to have in July when the resolution was passed. We demand that the Council take a step back and implement a collaborative process as promised that incorporates a qualitative community engagement process that includes environmentalists, neighborhoods, and the development community, and work towards ensuring the creation of a safe and habitable environment for all residents of Austin in the long term. This collaborative process can only result in creating a safe and habitable environment that incorporate an environmental strategy that will safely sustain all current and future Austin residents, as well as our children and grandchildren who are 100% of our tomorrow. Thank you for your time, and I'm going to turn it over to Bill Alshar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to say that we picked this spot because these 2 houses behind us are legacy houses, especially this one in the corner. It's been there since the 40s. And if you all want to do B-roll, go down Tillery. You see these buildings here. This is what we're trying to prevent, because there used to be houses there. Now that whole row from here all the way to Go Valley is single-family houses. And the contact team has fought to prevent that from happening so that we don't have displacement. Because every time a new building comes up in Austin, it's more expensive. So the most affordable housing is existing stock, including single-family housing. Now I'd like to have a former county commissioner judge, Bill Elshire, come and say a few words. Thank you, Bill.
For most families, buying a home is a major, the most major investment they'll ever make. It is the method by which we have generational wealth passed down. Homeowners and families should not have to fight the government to protect their investment or the neighborhood lifestyle that they have chosen. Some folks want to have a yard and a buffer between them and their neighbors. That's one reason homeowners buy in neighborhoods that have deed restrictions and covenants that every homeowner has agreed to obey. We've been frustrated for years that the Austin City Council ignores these deed restrictions and goes ahead and approves permits and subdivisions that violate, re-subdivisions that violate those restrictions. But now we have Leslie Poole, who wants to promote, encourage, and facilitate deed covenant restriction violations, and in violation of the homeowners' contractual rights that they have to prevent that kind of development occurring in their neighborhood. And we have Ryan Alter, who wants to expedite those violations and make them even quicker than neighbors have an opportunity to even know is going on. By contrast, the City of Houston Law Department has an entire division devoted to just enforcing deed covenants and restrictions. They help. They don't. That doesn't require then. If you're a resident in Houston, you don't have to go out and hire a lawyer or get one for free in order to enforce your deed restrictions. You file a complaint with the city attorney's office, and they'll enforce the deed restrictions. I have a case right now, middle-income neighborhood called Elmwood Estates in South Central Austin, in Ryan Alter's district, in which a Dallas developer came in. They have a deed restriction that says you can't have more than 2 homes on each lot. A Dallas developer came in and has, with the city's agreement, has re-subdivided one of those lots into 4. And now they claim they can build 2 houses on each one of those subdivided lots. 8 houses, where the deed restrictions say there can only be 2. I suggest that what Poole and Ryan Alter are proposing what Poole and Ryan Alter are proposing is to move the city's legal position from simply ignoring deed restrictions and covenants and violations of them to a position where the city is actively encouraging and facilitating these violations, making the city a litigation target for a property rights, taking claim, and interference in private existing contract rights. Thank you.
Yeah. So you see, our city council, almost in the last few years, the only way the city council has been made to abide by the law has been by lawsuit. And that's so tragic. Now, our next speaker is Bill Bunch from SOS.
Hey! Thank you, Danielle. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Bill Bunch. I'm Executive Director with Save Our Springs Alliance and Senior Attorney there as well. We've been working 30 years to protect the land, water, and wildlife of Austin and Central Texas. And we think it's important for the community to know that this initiative is not just an attack on neighborhoods or an attack on homeowners who value that property as a home where they want to live, rather than valuing it as an investment or a commodity to be traded, sold, or upzoned. But this is also an attack on our environment and 30, 40 years of Austin's commitment to protecting the environment. Almost all of the tens of thousands of lots that this would affect, 160 square miles of single-family zoning across our city. Almost all of those lots are small to modest size. And almost all of those lots have a 40% impervious cover limit, so that 60% of that lot has to be green. Lawn, trees, shrubbery. Yeah. Where the rain can fall and infiltrate, where the trees and grasses can nurture our mental health and cool our city. The tremendous amount of cooling happens from greenery, from living plants, shrinking the greenery from 60% to 5–10%. Oh. What does that mean? That means we are going to have a much hotter city. The urban heat island effect is going to be much worse. Flooding is going to be much worse. Those expanded rooftops and paved areas are going to increase localized flooding dramatically. More water pollution from the additional traffic, the pavement, and the very efficient delivery of the pollutants off of those hardened surfaces into our creeks and waterways. Increased urban creek erosion and a loss of recharge to our aquifers. It's hard to minimize the idea of how much more unlivable our central city will be without these green spaces that we currently enjoy, and everybody enjoys them, whether you own that property or not, whether you're living nearby an apartment complex, you're on a corridor where we do want greater density, you're walking your dogs, you're running, you're benefiting directly from these green spaces from our single-family homes. So we need to preserve our neighborhoods, we need to preserve our homes as places to live for communities rather than as a commodity. So we're urging the city to step back and think about this. This is not a planning proposal, this is an ideology proposal of developer deregulation, of neoliberal Reagan supply-side economics that doesn't work. It won't make housing more affordable. It won't protect the climate or the environment. And what it is forcing zoning change on homeowners, thousands and thousands of homeowners. This council, previous councils would never dream of forcing zoning changes onto developers. But they're ready to do it to homeowners who do not want their zoning changed, who do not want their taxes to skyrocket, because now it's a commodity rather than a home where they want to live and raise their families. So please join in our efforts to stop this train. Thank you.
Say no.
Say no what?
Say no to this development.
Say no to this proposal. Say no to this proposal. Say no to this proposal. Okay, that's enough. Thank you all. And once again, I urge you to take B-roll down Tillery, and you'll see a whole row of single-family houses that we're trying to protect here. So next, I'd like to introduce Carmen Llanes from GAVA.
Good afternoon. Go Austin, Vamos Austin, or GAVA, is a coalition of community organizers and residents in Austin's Eastern Crescent, particularly in North Central Austin, in the Runberg and St. John's areas, and in South and Southeast Austin. A lot of our neighborhoods don't have the ability to enforce deed restrictions because that requires resources. A lot of the tenants and low-income homeowners in our neighborhood don't have the resources to hire attorneys to challenge policies that are harmful to them and in some cases illegal. And so what we understand is in these market-driven neo-urbanist policies, the victims of these policies are the people who don't have the resources to legally enforce their rights. They are the losers in the market, and these policies have not been created with low-income homeowners or renters or unhoused people in mind. If they were, then they wouldn't be deregulating and offering our land up to developers and investors while disregarding safety regulations. The home initiative is dangerous to low-income renters and homeowners because it drives and spurs speculation, gentrification, and irresponsible development. I want to read a statement from a group of renters and neighbors of color, young people who have been in this city and watching this go on, renters for affordable housing. And I quote, "As young renters of color and longtime Austin residents, we have seen the way in which urbanist policies to redevelop Austin have only led to gentrification and displacement of our communities. Our generation can barely imagine home ownership, but we refuse to sign off on false promises of home ownership for middle-income people, especially when this is at the expense of low-income communities of color. Home has no requirements for affordability, meaning developers will sell to the wealthiest buyers, not middle-class families. As home will cause low-income homeowners to feel the pressure to sell to investors due to rising property taxes, renters like us will be displaced for demolitions. The ripple effects of rising rents and displacement will be felt throughout our working class and poor BIPOC communities in the Eastern Crescent. By creating a higher incentive for investors to buy up Austin, home accelerates gentrification, especially in the Eastern Crescent, where investors' profit margins are the highest. New urbanism, density, and walkable cities mean nothing if low-income people and people of color aren't even there to experience it because we've been displaced. For-profit redevelopment plans like Home are the cause of housing affordability crisis, not the solution. We are calling on council to stop buying into this false narrative sold to you by investors and developers. Our generation of young Austinites of color is watching, and we are ready to defend our communities now and during the election process. Woo! So what is the real solution? Responsible planning and neighborhood planning and development that considers anti-displacement and environmental and safety requirements. What is the solution? The council could implement the policy, the resolution that former council member Kathy Tovo, who hasn't been on council for a while, introduced in December of 2021, and it passed to allow auxiliary dwelling units, ADUs, on virtually every single family property in Austin, to explore the limits of deed restrictions, to explore zoning changes needed, and to explore loans and creative financing for low-income people so that they can actually build an ADU or access something. These are the kinds of policies that create more housing and disincentivize displacement. It's not granting 3 to 6 lots on a unit. That is developer level development. We recognize it. We call BS. This is harmful. We have real solutions, but we need real community planning that brings directly impacted people to the table. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We really appreciate you being here. Just so you know, this is being live streamed on the Austin Neighborhoods Council Facebook page if you need background information for that. Now, I'd like the speakers to come close, and if you have any questions for any of our speakers, please feel free to ask. So Anna and Carmen, come on over, and Bill. Any questions? From the press?
So I know some of these proposals are things that a few other cities around the country have tried out. They're not totally unique to Austin.
Okay.
But I'm curious if you have any kind of data or research or findings from places where similar things have been rolled out?
Sure. I think a great example to look at is the Twin Cities. So we saw St. Paul do a blanket zoning change to increase capacity on single-family lots to 3. And if you talk to experts on land use, like Mac McCarthy at the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, he would say off the cuff, they gave it away. They didn't ask for anything in return. So what have they gotten? We follow up a few years later and looking not just in St. Paul, but in cities across the country who have implemented policies like this. We're seeing approximately a 0.08 increase in housing. And when you look a little closer, so in some cases you get maybe let's say 1% increase in housing over a number of years, but much of that is replacing existing housing and often at higher prices. So we're not necessarily getting more affordable housing. We may be getting incrementally a little more housing, but at what cost? Another thing to consider is there's a similar proposal in cities in Washington state. I believe Tacoma has one right now being debated, and it comes with additional financial assistance for low-income homeowners, $50,000 to $80,000 in accessible interest-free loans or forgivable loans to construct an additional unit, recognizing that it costs tons of money to create an additional unit. Many are saying not only is $50,000 to $80,000 not enough, but in order to qualify for that kind of financial support, you already have to have a certain degree of credit, stability, right? And so the most low-income people who are at risk of loss of home ownership or displacement are not necessarily benefiting. And I say that's still much more progressive than what we have in Austin, Texas being presented, which is a complete entitlement on steroids, not 1 or 2 additional units, but 3 to 6 additional units, and no creative financing or support or subsidy for low-income people.
Bill, you want to say anything to that?
I would just say that that's a great question of like where's the data to support or refute this proposal, and that's the question that needs to be directed at the mayor and the city council. Make the case, because there's no there. It won't make it more affordable. It won't benefit the climate, and in fact, quite the opposite.
Any other questions?
Any comments in Spanish?
¿En
Si quieren.
Sí, dale. Dale, mijo, en español.
Una cosa que yo quisiera saber es cuántas personas en las comunidades directamente impactadas se han consultado acerca de esta póliza, porque esta política es algo muy, muy nuevo y cambia completamente la habilidad de los dueños, los que tienen propiedad, para vender, para desarrollar o para vender a alguien que va a desarrollar su propiedad. ¿Y quién se está notificando? Los inquilinos no se están notificando. Tal vez si tienen alguien con quien tienen buena relación con la persona a quien inquilinan, o sea, rentan el dueño de la casa. Pero lo que vemos en nuestras comunidades, especialmente en las comunidades latinas, muchos rentan su casa o tienen casas que pertenecen a ellos, pero son de muy bajos recursos. O sea, cada año con los impuestos, con la renta, siempre batallan con esos costos que están subiendo. Entonces, no entiendo cómo este cambio, que cambia el valor del terreno para que suba, para que se invierta con más desarrollo, ¿cómo va a beneficiar a las personas, los inquilinos, o las personas que dependen en esta relación con el dueño de la casa para proveer una renta asequible? Eso no considera las propiedades que se van a redesarrollar más rápido, van a ser las propiedades de menor valor. Entonces eso va a impactar a las personas que pagan menos en renta en nuestra ciudad, las personas que ya se están desplazando con la política que ya tenemos, y no encontramos una solución en esta política. Encontramos más riesgos de desplazamiento, más riesgo de inundaciones que también afectan a nuestras comunidades más, y no vemos el beneficio porque esa política no fue creada con nosotros en mente. No nos tomaron en cuenta, no tomaron en cuenta los inquilinos de bajos recursos o los dueños de casa que están batallando para mantener esa propiedad en sus manos.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the Austin Neighborhoods Council, all of our neighbors all over town. I want to thank GAVA. I want to especially thank Communities Not Commodity for their bravery in court, and I want to thank SOS and Poder for all of us being here. Thank you very much for being here. Like I say, we will be live streaming, and this will be accessible at the Austin Neighborhoods Council Facebook page. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right.
Hi, how are you? Good. Okay. So